Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome to the Toned and Toneful video podcast, episode 11, Better Storytelling and How It Enhances Our Lives. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about storytelling and how you'll notice in every single avenue of our life, it's there. The culture of the human being and the human existence and experience is based around stories. And I think one of the most interesting things that you can notice and one of the most interesting things that you can take away from your life is the people who are the best storytellers tend to be the people who enjoy life the most. Think about that for a second. So as an artist, we're always aiming to make things and always aiming to do things that are going to be more connected to our listener, or if we're an actor, we're going to try to connect to their emotion more. Or if we're a person who's writing a book, we're trying to stir up the imagination more. So no matter what avenue that we're in, of entertainment, of art, of anything, you have to remember that your ability to tell a story is going to enhance the experience for the person who's going to be observing the art so much more than a person who's just trying to make a piece of art. It's a really hard thing to kind of explain, but I think that that's why when a lot of people look at art, it's created in the way that it is. And let me explain what I mean by that. So, and no matter what form of art that we could have movies, we could have music, we could have novels, we could have family gatherings, which is like a cultural thing, but it's there. We could even have a court case. This is how deep it goes. No matter where you go in life, there's a story. And that story is meant to allow people to understand what happened in a certain moment. So the better that someone is as a storyteller, that means the more details, the more variables, and the more that they could put into that so that people can see the experience more clearly in the format it's delivered. So let me go back to that. So communicating is the main part of a story thing. So that's, again, what's so important. So communication, if you can get your communication down in your story, but you need to know what it is. So if it's a song, is it that there is a gritty note played somewhere? Is it that it's the pristine piano part that's bringing it out? Is it the melody that keeps reoccurring throughout the song that's there? As the actor, is it the ability to cry without, just drawing that out of yourself where people are like, holy moly, this person just cried out of nowhere and this person had a really strong effect on me? Or is it, and the truth is, it's all those things. The piece of art that you look at that looks so real, the advertisement that makes you laugh within 15 seconds with the story. These are all different dynamics that we come to understand as storytelling. And the way that we deal with them and the way that we communicate them is very important. So I want you guys to take a second to think about it. A person who's just trying to make a song on one hand, a person who's just trying to make a song. And they're like, oh, I'm going to have these elements. I'm going to write it in this key. It's going to have this rhythm signature, and it's going to be this. That song from that person is going to be very different from a person who is living a life. And that's why I wanted to say, there's two different, kind of methods. There's a person who writes music like it's work, like they keep making up riffs and they keep doing stuff, or they keep doing acting gigs where they're portraying a certain character and they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. And then there are those over here who, when they are working on their music, they're actually communicating a story where it's like, wow, I went into the garden today and I noticed this thing and I felt like the flower, if it could talk, would have said this to me. Or, people who are doing movies and they're looking into the other actor's eye and they believe that's their wife and that's why they can cry when that character is supposedly dying in the movie, or they believe that this person is their mother or something, and they can just draw up that emotion that's needed for that particular moment. And it's incredible because all legendary artists of every type have the ability to communicate so strongly. Let's take an example. You look at someone like Guthrie Govan on guitar, and he's a shredder. And you look at someone like Sean Lane, he's a shredder, really hard levels of shred. But at the same time, there's so much story in that music, anyone can connect to it. They just realize that it's notey music that they can connect to. Whereas if you look on the other side and you look at Beethoven was a storyteller. You can still hear that in Beethoven's music today. And then you can go all the way to someone who's a very big lyricist like Bob Dylan and say that he told stories and he wrote them in a, lyrical formatted way. So no matter which way you turn, Leonardo da Vinci, all his creations were art, and they were all communications of ideas that he had in his ideas, and he communicated them to people because he wanted them to be real. So that's one of the first things I want you guys to think about is like your process at that which you approach your storytelling, which means that is the process at which you approach your art. Because how you approach your storytelling is how you approach your art. If you're very like, you walk up to someone and you just go, hey, like today sucks, like your music is probably a lot like that, where it's like very like, you're like, okay, that's the intro of the song. That's how it goes. Or the verse comes in like that, and the guy's just kind of like lyrically coming in like that. Yeah, today sucks. Or can you deliver that more artistically? You know what's really unfortunate about today? Boom, 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 boom. The person's actually curious. You ask them a question. Holy shit. Like, you could turn that around on them through storytelling them. Through the correct storytelling. Storytelling doesn't only have to be delivering something. It can be asking a question and involving people. So I want you guys to kind of remember that process is very, very, very important. And if you can't get that dialed in for yourself, you're going to notice that your storytelling and the way that you do your art format, it doesn't matter what the art format is. I, again, go towards music and guitar because that's what I do. But no matter what format you're doing, you'll realize that like you're not getting the result because that is part of the communication. That's part of the honesty. So like, we've spoken on being a perfectionist and the communication. Now this is the side of it where it's like, how are people receiving it? And how well are you constructing it for others? So while you might be a perfectionist and want great results, are you even constructing the experience for others when they experience you well enough to make it a thing that people enjoy your stories? They enjoy your music. When you pick up a guitar, they're like, dude, I hope he plays for a little bit. I hope she plays for a little bit. Or is it one of those things where it's like, oh man, they're picking up their guitar again. Do they always do this? They always show me like 4 new songs that I don't want to hear. And secretly they know as a friend they need to like hear you out. Remember, when you want to build up confidence in yourself and you want to build that up, you got to keep these things in mind. You got to come from an honest place. And I want you guys to remember another thing. This is kind of like another, again, these episodes are always me kind of going through it. Your inner child and how your inner child told stories. Your inner child knows the best way to express the thought of what your storytelling is. If you were a little kid and you told stories to your parents about outer space, or you told your dad and mom about the firemen that you were gonna be and how you're gonna do this, or maybe you were the quiet kid. You did it with Legos and you kind of lived out stories. Or, as a young lady, you played with your Polly Pockets or your Barbies and you kind of made them talk and they lived out certain scenarios because you're observing the world through story. Remember, story is not only the experience of it, it's also knowledge. It could be moral, and it's also just wisdom passed down without having to experience if the person wants to live in the story. So think of how cool that is as a storyteller. If you tell a story well enough and warn someone of something well enough in the right way, you can actually warn them without them doing it and being foolish or doing something wrong. So this is a really big thing. And that's why I say, after you figure out that expression for yourself, like that young inner child expression, it's not about doing the same thing that you thought you would want to do or anything. It's the way that you thought it up. Like the colors you thought of and the kind of the format that you thought of creativity in its most basic form and the way you felt about it. When you do stuff now, does it still draw from that well, which is your core internal creativity? No one can take that from you. That's life given. I don't know if that's from the universe, God, however you feel that where that comes from, you say that, but the truth is somewhere inside of all of us, there's this core creativity. There's this core being. And that way of expressing that is what really at the base of our storytelling and the base of all our creativity, whatever we choose to do, that's where it comes from. And that's why it's the responsibility. Once you build trust in people, once people are willing to hear your stories, once you have people, they actually listen to you, they actually care. You're making an experience for them. Don't tell tall tales. I'm going to say this one more time. Don't tell tall tales. There is nothing to be gained from lying. And you guys need to understand that even expanding on a story, there's a lot of famous artists that people say, oh, they played with this amp at this loud, or they did this, or they did that. And it was a trick to make sure that people didn't know, and it was this, and it was that. And, oh, really, actually what happened was this, but in the history book, they wrote that. The reason there's all these problems with all that history is because someone's lying. Don't tell tall tales. When you build trust in people, one of the greatest things you have is their trust. So when you storytell to them, make sure that your storytelling is a reflection of that trust. If they trust you, tell them real stories. Don't lie to them. Be honest with them. Honor them for the fact that they gave you some format of letting you be you. Remember that it's your duty to not build lies in this world. This world is already messed up enough. There's a lot going wrong, and we could talk about that for hours on another whole separate note. But the real important thing that I want you guys to recognize is that we don't have to live like that. That doesn't have to be our existence. Every one of us can bind together and tell more truths, even if that's tough. But remember, if we built up trust in the people who are around us, you know what? You know what I'm thinking right now? A real storyteller tells a real story. A real storyteller tells a real story. A real storyteller would never tell a not real story. If it's a fiction book, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. If it's a story made to make someone laugh, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. But we're talking about real deal life lessons. We're talking about when we talk about ourselves. And when we play music, when we act, when we paint a picture, there has to be honesty. And in that honesty has to be our style of storytelling. So there's like honesty on the bigger circle. And then what fine-tunes it is our type of creativity. And then what fine-tunes it even more is like the ability to keep making it more towards your core belief. Like when you're like, this looks like my core belief. And that has to be in your music. Remember, every legendary artist of every caliber, of every type has it. Like you can even take a model like Marilyn Monroe, and she had authenticity and storytelling in her. When she would do something, there was like she would tell a story. So that's as insane as that sounds. Everyone's a storyteller. You're at a court case. It's two people telling stories, and then there's a person judging whose story makes the most sense and is the most real and who deserves retribution for the story that happened. Literally, it's people telling stories in court. That's what court is. And then there's a person listening. So remember how important storytelling is to our lives. So if we can enhance our honesty, we can have a duty to our own creativity and all the things that we're doing. And remember that like storytelling in our way and being able to gather someone's attention with our specific style of doing something is one of the most fulfilling things that we can have in our life. Do you know how crazy it is to feel good about what you're doing and know, and absolutely know within yourself that you're just expressing yourself the way that you want to be? And you don't have to be another thing. You don't have to act another way. That is one of the most best places that we can be in life in order to make moves that are honest in this world, to correct ourselves and to correct even those around us. It helps all of us around each other be our best selves. When someone sees someone living their honest self, being a storyteller, it encourages storytellers. Remember, when your parents are good storytellers, your children become, good storytellers. So those of you who are parents, remember that. Those of you who aren't parents, remember we're parents to our art pieces. And we mother and father them into existence. We bring them in here, and we bring them into some level of that the world can see it and feel it, and they can go, look at this beautiful thing you brought in the world, or look at this. Who cares if they say beautiful? Just look at this thing you brought into the world. And as an artist, that is your ultimate goal, is to be able to say that you're doing that, and that particular story, no matter what it is, no matter how simple or how complicated, is expressed the way that you want it to be. Last couple hints I want to give you guys to maybe make it a little bit easier on you to maybe kind of express this if you're in a spot where you're still having a hard time with this, like maybe you're working on it. Write down your stories and look at them. Maybe if you're a person not used to telling stories, maybe you walk up to a group of friends and they ask you how you're doing and you do the "I'm fine" and you don't say anything. You're going to have to work a little bit harder than other people do to kind of pull your storytelling skill together. You're going to have to be the kind of person who's going to have to get a little more on top of it because you don't naturally want to express yourself that way. And if you're not going to do it with music, if you're not going to do it with something, and I'm just going to be honest with you, I'm going to do an episode that's on social media, but I do not think that going on social media and just posting a bunch of stories that are you getting a really, really upset or really emotional is the best way to express yourself. I understand there's a space for that, but I think that there's a more constructive way, and that should be in some form of storytelling, whether that's talking to your family, whether that's giving someone else a lesson not to make the same mistake that you made, anything. These things are all super important. So I just wanted to say thank you guys very much for hanging out with me for this episode of Toned and Toneful, episode 11, being a better storyteller and how I think it enhances your life on this very nice rainy day. So I just wanted to say thank you to you guys, and Toned and Toneful.